Okay, so we are live. Good morning, everybody. This is Steve Sabludowsky, publisher of BuddyBuzz.com. And this morning, we're going to be talking to Bernie Pinsonat, pollster, political analyst. Bernie Pinsonat, good morning to you, Bernie.
Good morning, Steve.
So, we have a lot to talk about. Louisiana legislature, Louisiana politics. So let's start with the legislature. We're roughly, what, 5 days, 4 days away from the third special session. And do you have any hope that maybe we might finalize a budget with revenues?
Well, we have a budget. The governor signed it. Uh, you're correct on the other problem. The other part of it is the revenue to fund it, and this will be the third special session that the governor and the legislature have attempted to come up with something would be acceptable to both. You could almost say that acceptable to the House of Representatives because the Senate would probably go along with, well, the Senate wouldn't go along with the governor, I don't think, on an income tax. So the only available revenue, maybe utility tax on certain businesses, and of course, sales tax on everyone. And then you clean pennies and all those other things about certain services are exempted. But the fight now is about whether we have a half a penny or a third of a penny, which isn't a lot of money, but for some reason, it may not be a lot of money, but it is a big political fight over a small amount of money, and it's more to do with who wins versus uh, who's right or who's wrong. And that's where we find ourselves, and that's why we're having our third special session. And the other backdrop is, Stephen, is the public and where are they? Since this is about 10 years now, 11 years, where Louisiana has been involved in crisis management related to budgets, who we're going to cut, skies falling, and all that other stuff. The backdrop is, and it's not surprising, but people around the Capitol are much more concerned about what's happening than the people out in the hinterland. They're just not that engaged. You can have all the secretaries of departments get on radio and TV and say these horrible things are going to happen, but look, I'm pretty clued in to, unless you're affected directly by government, the average person out there just doesn't buy into all of the rhetoric about the skies falling. So that's one of the reasons that most of the legislators who are fighting raising more revenue, they're not worried about getting beat for reelection. It's just not going to happen. So we have an impasse, and that impasse continues into a third special session.
Okay, if you could just speak a little bit louder. I don't know if you're able to, but um, okay, so what I hear you saying is this: that the voters of Louisiana, unless they are somehow tied to government, they don't feel like there would be any impact, and so therefore they do not want to raise any taxes.
Well, now there's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is this has been going on for what, 10 years?
Yeah.
And the sky is falling, and all these dastardly, horrible things are going to happen. And to us, if we don't give more, come up with more revenue, and we did come up with more revenue, $1 billion, what, a billion, whatever it was. Then we started this year, last year, we got to have this, we got to have that. Now we're down to, we really collected a billion plus in taxes. We really don't need that much now. And so how much do we really need? And if you're the average voter, I mean, first of all, you're not going to pay attention to all this stuff because it's too complicated. Because we, uh, 3 years ago, we raised a 1.3 billion or whatever it was, and then we came back and immediately we started having surpluses. And is it at 640 million? Is it? We started out the year it was $1 billion surplus. The fiscal cliff changes almost weekly or monthly, and how does anybody really think that the public can follow this stuff and be that concerned about it since nothing has happened in 10 years? The universities have been cut, but I don't find that many people that are that concerned about it. We can sit here and say that's horrible and other states aren't doing this, but this is Louisiana, and somebody hasn't figured out how to sell the voters on getting them engaged and wanting them to fix problems that takes revenue for us. So we're not doing a very good job of selling it, and with conflicts with the Democratic governor and Republican legislator, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't the public be skeptical?
Okay, if anybody has a question right now talking about Louisiana legislature and then Louisiana politics, and then maybe we get into a little bit U.S. Politics, please post on Facebook and certainly make your comments on Twitter. Also, this is streaming on YouTube, so we'd love to get some feedback, comments, etc. We'll go ahead and we will read those comments, and so that's how this program works. Also, please share with your friends, share with your Facebook friends, Twitter, YouTube, and so on. So I think you're saying that people just disbelieve that there is an issue, that there is a budget issue. The people in Louisiana disbelieve.
Well, it's a disconnect. This has been going on for 10 years. We have they don't buy into the fact that year after year after year we're going over a fiscal cliff and the world's going to come to an end. Yet over the last 9 or 10 years, it hasn't. And every year it's the same argument. Every year it's the same alarms being set off. Last year, alarms went off about our roads and bridges are horrible. We need to rate what is 17% gasoline tax. Who came up with that idea? You know, the public wasn't interested in it. And I ran a survey, and almost 70% of Louisiana didn't want to put up revenue. Now, I can't sit here and say that we don't need that revenue, but the case wasn't made that revenue was needed, and so it didn't pass, didn't get out of the House. That was part of last year's request for more revenue. And at the same time, this year we have POPs on the line, we have higher education on the line again, and God knows what else. But maybe the legislatures and the governors figured out this much. Of all the areas of state government, and I've been saying this in Poland forever, there's only one thing in that building that people care about, the majority of them, because of their grandkids or whoever else, and it's TOPS. It is the most emotional funding program in Louisiana, and it is the priority of most people. It doesn't get funded. Yeah, maybe someone would pay a price, but other than that, when you're talking about higher education, when you're talking about whatever else, people don't jump on listen to this stuff on the news or read the newspaper and go find the telephone or their cell phone to call a legislator and say, look, if you don't vote for all this revenue, I'm going to vote for. I represent lots of these legislators. They're not getting those kind of calls. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So disconnect is the term I keep using. For some reason, we can't figure out how to get the public connected back into the process and have them believe that there's a crisis around the next corner that could result in serious problems for a lot of people in Louisiana because of loss of government services. There is no such, there isn't enough concern out there at this point in time to make any difference, and it's being shown by the way the people who are closest to the voters, the House of Representatives, there's enough of them out there that you can't, it's very difficult to pass any kind of new revenue because they're going to suffer any repercussions when they go back home. If they'll probably have a candidate run against them if they vote for taxes, because most of those districts, this is a red, I keep saying it, But at the present time, there's a connect solve. Can we come up with a half a penny? Can we do some budget cuts? Can we do those things? Yeah, my hope is that there'll be a consensus and they'll find a solution for this. It certainly would be tragic if we can't fix this in within the Capitol walls. And let me make this clear: it's got to be fixed within the Capitol walls, because there's nobody at this point in time in the state capable of going outside the Capitol and rounding up concern among the public enough to make a difference, to make most legislators want to raise revenue. It's not there. It doesn't show up in the survey. And remember the survey I did at the end of last year where it showed great high marks for the governor. But at the same time, in that same survey, nobody read it, nobody paid attention, but I warned everybody that his problem with his popularity was, as he goes into the Capitol, people in Louisiana, the majority of white voters, Republicans and independents, 2/3 of them trust the Republican legislators more than they do him when it comes to revenue in the budget. And that's the backdrop, and it hasn't gotten better. He hasn't done anything to improve it, nor have the Republicans done anything to improve the other side of the coin towards their point of view. So we're at a stalemate.
Okay, so is just looking at what you're saying or hearing what you're saying, you're saying that the voters are cool with a reduction of 30% on tops, which is pretty much what it is at this point.
No, I'm not saying they're cool with it. I'm saying that if that did occur, that's the problem. That's primary. That probably gets their attention more than anything else when you're talking about cutting tops. Now, if you did actually cut tops, yeah, it probably would. I'm sure there's some legislators, especially those who have a lot of tops in it. Yes, that has potential cause and problem. But at the present time, I think you're going to have to wait and see what happens. If the Republicans in the House are daring enough to risk that possibility, we'll see. But at the present time, they weren't willing enough to go for a half a penny versus a penny, which, by the way, I don't see that much difference. And tops gets mixed up in it only because it's the most emotional spending of a program we have in Louisiana. Nothing else elicits more emotion when you talk about funding or cutting than tops does, which tells you a lot about state government and the priorities in the state and the public. Something like that benefits them personally, something that so the two sides of the street. You got the people on welfare that emotionally get upset, the people on universities that get upset, but you want to go out in the street and talk to the average person, they don't understand why they can't fund a little easily program like TOPS, which is what they think is not that big a deal. Why can't the legislature fund that? Well, somebody may have to pay with some spending a lot of extra money to get reelected if somebody runs against them on TOPS. But running against somebody because they didn't raise taxes certainly isn't feasible in most districts in Louisiana, especially the conservative ones. So TOPS is a different animal, and it does bring some emotion to the table.
Okay, so the way that the budget is structured, though, any increase in tops would basically is pro rata. So, any dollar coming in is going to be spread out on all the programs that at this point in time are theoretically deficient.
Well, that's that's the dilemma that the legislature faces. There are people in the Capitol, and there are legislators who are not going to vote for it. You may pass. Think about this. There are 104 legislators. 70. It's very difficult, as we're seeing. It's very difficult to get 70 votes of 104 legislators. But you got 34 legislators. Maybe you can get 72. Maybe you can get 73. But the point is, you got 30 plus legislators, and you can't get them to vote for a tax for nothing. they're just not going to vote for a tax, and probably for good reason, because they know back home somebody would probably run against them and may beat it. So it's it's that difficult when you're only talking about a small amount of money. But if you can get 74 votes, that would be wonderful. But you still got 30 legislators out there that don't care what you do with the budget. They're not going to vote for a tax. And that's the backdrop. That's another complication added to the already uh, difficult task of finding. Look, we got six. I think we got 63 votes on one of the last tax votes. So there's what's the saying? Cut to the chase. This is all about 7 votes. They got those. If they go get those people and then find another 7 votes, then this special session is over, and a half a penny would be passed. The governor's funding request, it would be over $400 million plus dollars. It'd be 500 million, which is not 640, by the way. So the session would be over, and everybody go home, everybody would be happy. Right. So it's not an impossible task, but keep in mind there are 30 legislators out there that if the government shut down, they'd still vote no. So that's the risk. You can't convince them that the government doesn't have enough money. So they're willing to risk that. And by the way, the cuts wouldn't be as dramatic as everyone claims, because they always find money for this pot and that pot.
Okay, so I'm looking at an article that was in the TimesPicayune.com, and I think they have an interesting list of programs and services that would be affected. This is by Julia O'Donoghue. And to start with, the universities at this point, higher ed, they're short $97 million. Now, they've been hit over the last 10 years. I mean, there's no question they've been hit, and that students are not able to get certain programs. Professors have left, but including LSU Medical School, $97 million. As I understand it, if they approve the 4.33, then you're still about $66 million short.
Well, that's correct. But here's the other side of the coin. Tuition is what, more than doubled in the last 10 years? And then your fees probably have doubled. So if you're getting tops, by the way, the fees, and TOPS doesn't pay for fees. Fees right now are more, you pay more in fees to the university than you get back in TOPS. The other problem with it is, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be funded, I'm saying here's your PR problem. I have never done a survey in Louisiana on funding for higher education when this fact occurs in every survey. People who have graduated from these universities we speak of that'll be cut, they're the toughest people to want to give you another dime to fund higher education. The most educated, the highest earning residents of Louisiana, if you ask them to pay income tax for higher income tax for higher education, they go through the roof.
But we're talking about sales tax.
I know, but I'm saying when we're talking about funding higher education, and people who benefited from higher education are the least likely to want to give you another dime for higher education. That's a tough backdrop to overcome.
But just out of curiosity, I mean, have you polled, hey, are you willing to lose $97 million and because of 17 cents per $100 of your purchase, which is really what it comes down to.
Well, Stephen, I'm saying that.
No, I hear what you're saying.
This is a backdrop of what the problem is. Now, can that be sold? And will most people say, yeah, sure, certainly they would. And right now, I think you're talking about more politics of Louisiana than you are about actual money. Uh, Look, Louisiana, whether we like it or not, is no different from Washington. It's becoming more Washington every day, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And there is when you have a Democratic governor in a Republican red state that Trump carried, like stomped everyone, and the legislature has enough Trump-like uh, Trump supporters in it, and they know that this is a Trump territory, and they know that this is a red state Republican. Helping out the Democratic governor is certainly in the background as one of the problems, whether we like it or not.
Sure. No.
Can we find the 7 votes? Bernie Pinsonat's not sitting here saying we shouldn't. I'm saying we should be able to find it, but it's not a simple proposition because there's so many things going on, and most legislators know that back home there is no clear understanding or belief by the voters that Baton Rouge can live with less money. There are enough people back home that Baton Rouge, the state capital, can live with money, and they just don't buy into the argument the world's coming to an end. But again, that's the backdrop of why we're having so much problem. Is it the reason? No, but it's part of the problem. Should we be able to find 7 votes? I think you should be able to, and that's incumbent upon the governor and legislative leadership to come up with a compromise. Look, if there's no compromise for that related to budget cuts and the half a penny, then shame on everybody, because you should be able to come up with some way to get the $500 million, along with something related to the Republicans and whatever they want. And if you can't do that this time, then shame on everybody, because everybody will have failed.
Okay, so now another issue, and I know your response is going to be pretty much the same. I'm just going through the litany here. 10,000 non-violent offenders would have to be released early. So, as I hear you saying that the voters really don't believe that 10,000 non-violent offenders will be released.
I don't know if they don't believe it. The universities are saying we're going to kick kids out of school. We're going to do away with cops. We're going to can't fix the bridges. We're going to release prison. All of those things are these people. I don't really think it helps. I think the public is not going to sit there and call their legislator because some bureaucrat makes a statement of doom and gloom. I think the public expects that there should be some type of solution available without coming to that. If any of that happens, and something like that actually does happen, I'm not so sure they wouldn't hold state government responsible. Look, there's a funny phenomenon called the legislature's broke and can't be fixed. But when Bernie Pinsonat calls the voters back home and discusses this stuff and say, well, yeah, the legislature's a joke, they ought all be fired. What about your I really like he or she. They do a great job. They vote just the way I want them to.
Right. Supplemental SNAP is in jeopardy. Program helps about 20% of the state population, and according to the article, that's in jeopardy. Juvenile justice, district attorneys, there's no money for the assistant DAs. I mean, I guess my point is that are we in such disbelief? Do we disbelieve either the media or the government bureaucracy who are saying that this is what's going to happen? And if it does happen, then you're saying they're not going to blame their own legislator who say votes no. I think maybe we lost you. Are you there? Let's see. Bear with me.
I can't.
Okay, are you there? Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can.
I
Oh, here you go. I'm back.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Can you hear me?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, we're back. Everything's, for some reason, I lost you for. Anyway, let's go back to the question.
Okay, so basically, what my question was this. Let me just change something on my side, if you don't mind. But basically, the question I was asking is this: that it seems to me that pretty much what you're saying is that if you look at food stamps, you're talking about 20% of the state, and there's not enough support for the loss of food stamps, money to administer the program. And so in essence, I think I hear you saying that, look, the people just don't believe state bureaucrats, and they don't believe them enough when the state bureaucrats say that there won't be money for the food stamps administration, there won't be money for the higher education. I got something yesterday in an email that said that I think it was $7 million, and unless you pay the $7 million or raise $7 million, that people in homes are going to not have the funding for the homes.
Well, the governor's.
And this was not the governor making the statement.
They sent out letters to nursing homes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. That if you look up bad idea, that'll be under bad ideas in the dictionary. You don't threaten people because you're in the middle of the budget fight. I'm going to make you pay a price because the legislature won't fund your program, so you're going to punish them. It's taken more that way, Stephen, than it is. They expect the services to continue. Now, if they physically can't and the money's not there, then the governor has to do what he has to do. Now, should the governor warn everyone that this is a possibility? Certainly we should. But we do it every year. We've been doing it for 10 years. And the universities might not have as much money as they'd like to have. Of course, you can always raise tuition. They certainly raise fees any chance they get. But all of these warnings and all of these threats of doom, I don't really think they help that much. I think it aggravates people more than it helps. And if that would happen, I'm not so sure the public wouldn't go really become furious that people are being let out. You can blame that on 20 legislators all you want, but I'm not sure the public will buy it. You can't, what you can do, go out and point which legislator voted for and against it. The public's going to hold state government responsible for the threat of their lives that may or may not come back into the community. I don't know. I've never been a fan of that, and I've never seen a poll that showed, look, the public expects services to be delivered. The governor and the legislature are expected to perform those services. And past that, if all of this doom is gloom is going to happen, then let it happen, and let's see what the governor can call them back in a special session. So I just don't think the public buys into all of this stuff, and I don't know how many. I can't say it I've been doing this for a long time in Poland state. The public just doesn't buy into all of the stuff that comes out of the state capitol. And since it's been 12 years of this, why would they believe it?
Well, but okay, so playing devil's advocate, if I might, and that is that they certainly are buying into the fact that they're going to lose 30% of their top's money. That's a reality. That's something that happened uh, basically last year. That
Yeah, well,
Tops was not funded, and so they know that this happens.
well, let me tell you though, people who have kids on tops, grandparents, and everybody else related. But as far as but as far as an issue that people are in mass upset about tops, no, they're not. People who benefit from it, and they're a very vocal group of people. But Bernie Pinsonat's not sitting here saying that, uh, for example, yeah, if I have grandkids, I'd certainly like to have it. Would I like to see it continue? But I'm like most people, uh, because not everyone goes to college. What 25%? Uh, Not everybody in Louisiana is that upset. They don't believe it'll really happen to start with. People who are energized are the ones who have it and they're cut. Is it going to make now? If you're running for reelection, you got 38 people in the district who are furious, and they go out and make your life miserable. You know that's a big deal to some legislators. 100, 200, it could be 300 people, but because you have so many kids. But no, is the average voter in Louisiana sitting in their uh, chair at night watching local news, and they're upset enough about tops being cut to call their legislator? It's not happening.
Yeah, and that's yeah, that's amazing. So let me uh, respond to some of these posts here. Melvin Share says, asks the question, are the tax breaks to the wealthy and corporations from the Jindal era still in place? You want to tackle that?
I think they've done a decent job on that, but what people don't realize, you talk about tax breaks and all the Jindal stuff. Jindal actually tried the tax business before he left. I think his last two sessions, business was certainly not happy with Jindal because he did raise taxes on it. I think it was $700 million year before. But let me remind you, was 65, 70% of all property taxes are paid in Louisiana. 55, like over half the sales taxes are paid by businesses. They and services. So Louisiana's not that far out of line. Do we have giveaways? Sure. And are they peeling away at them? My impression is they have. I know a lot of the tax breaks um, that the legislature last 2 years, last 4 years, business certainly hasn't been given any special breaks to my knowledge. For the last 4 years, business has been taxed more than it's gotten back. I can assure you that.
Okay, so here's another comment here. This is from our friend Tim Allen Matthews. And what he says is that I have a hard time believing in any government official and what they say. I'd rather someone actually say, times are going to be tough, programs may be cut, but we don't have the budget. Once we do and find a solution, we will operate as minimal as possible until then. So, Tim Allen Matthews is one of the people who consistently believes that he doesn't believe the government official.
Well, he's not alone. That's the problem. Uh, the governor has found out that is a view held by a lot of people in Louisiana. If it wasn't, he wouldn't be having so much problem raising the revenue he thinks he needs. But I point out to we saw an interview on one of the bloggers about state senator finding $40 million in DHH. They just found it. That didn't go unnoticed. They just found $40 million. How many $40 million pots are there? Anytime something like that happens,
Sure.
it just blows the confidence or the belief by the taxpayers that there's not a lot of that going on. And it only takes one or two of them like that, and all the, and then anything anyone says beyond that, of course, is met with skepticism. But I think that we can sit here and talk about the negative and all the problems, and we do know there's a disconnect. We do know there's a politics of a Democratic governor and a Republican governor. Anybody that didn't see this coming, I don't know what they've been doing for the last 12 years in Louisiana. It's just, it's going to not be that workable. I don't care what anyone says. Republicans want to elect a Republican governor. What are they going to do? En masse go out and support a Democrat? It's not going to happen.
So,
all of that is a backdrop, but still, if you focus on the problem, and that's what the legislature should be doing, is solving this problem to do the things that you, in our suggestion, they need to do and fund the things that are critical, is find 7 votes. And it shouldn't be that difficult. They should be able to come up with a solution. And I was glad to see Senator Lario and Speaker Barra said that they're going to have meetings this week, meetings Monday, and see if they can forge out a compromise to solve the problem. There is no reason they shouldn't be able to do that. So we can talk about the backdrops that have gotten us here. The real problem is finding 7 votes, and I'm hopeful, and I'm not confident, but I'm of the opinion they'll be able to find 7 votes with some type of solution that everybody can go home voting for and get out of town.
Okay, so here's the last bit we'll talk about in terms of the Louisiana legislature, and we'll shift gears for a second. I just put up a tweet. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but the audience can. And this was the AP story from Melinda Delott, and basically saying that the ex-Bobby Jindal aides backed the sales tax to stop the budget cuts, and Paul Rainwater and Tim Barfield. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Does that surprise you?
They backed them?
They backed the sales tax. In other words, they think that there will be too many cuts, it will be too hurtful.
Well, Tim Barfield works for a company that benefits from government. Why wouldn't? And there's nothing wrong with that. And he makes a living off of planning and whatever. Rainwater is a lobbyist. Why would ex-general employees have anything to do with the term? Look, they're both great guys and they both do great jobs for their company. But there's a big difference being a former government employee and now still working off or around government, being for tax cuts. Maybe the logic of that I find hard to understand.
Okay. So that's a legitimate response. I'm going to put up another tweet in just 1 second. I'm just looking. Here's one I'm going to put up. And let me just make sure that it's up on the screen. Yeah, okay, so this one is shifting gears. 1 year ago, Steve Scalise, and he says it's more than a game, referring to the baseball game. And so Steve Scalise says that he's not going to run for governor. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah. That story came out of Washington. He's been saying that the last 6-7 months that he's not interested. He likes what he's doing. He thinks he has a shot at being the next speaker. Um, it may be a different story if they lose the House, and uh, who knows, 2 years from now,
Right.
maybe have another shot at it. But my impression is, um, um, I think he's making the right decision for himself today. But um, he has, but the other problem is, and I keep pointing, Steve Scalise is all powerful in within the Republican ranks of the United States Congress. But when it comes to Louisiana, it comes back home, and it comes to um, politics of the governor's race. There's somebody in front of him who's a lot, who has a bigger, heavier footprint, and United States Senator uh, John Kennedy. Uh, they're both, obviously Scalise is powerful in the congressional side of the Capitol, but the United States Senator, especially Kennedy, who's won statewide, which Steve Scalise has never done. Kennedy is a more powerful politician. He's uh, Bill Cassidy is a very popular. He's going to be reelected unless something happens to him. He decides not to run, and he's equal to Kennedy. In fact, he's senior. But when it comes to Louisiana, Kennedy is engaged in state politics. Cassidy doesn't has never shown any interest playing politics at the street level where Kennedy does. So you can talk about Scalise all you want. You can't push John Kennedy out of the way if Kennedy wants to run for governor. And they
Okay,
both
so
know that it wouldn't
yeah,
be in either best interest.
I
So
just put up a tweet. It's one from John Kennedy from yesterday, and where he says that he wants to thank President Trump today on behalf of all Americans who believe in peace for the successful start to what I hope is a successful relationship with North Korea. My point is this: he's been very visible on all the cable stations. And do you have a feel for whether or not he might decide to run for governor?
well, I think he's doing what he's doing. Kennedy's lost 2 elections, and I watched him. And I talked to John Kennedy, I don't know, a year and a half. Um, but if you watch John Kennedy, he learned. He lost twice. And he's one of these guys that may have lost twice, but every time he lost, he learned. And I watched him run for the Senate, and I watched him before he ran for the Senate get ready to run for something statewide. And he's doing what he should be doing. He hasn't pulled the trigger, he hasn't made an announcement, but he's involved with the key legislative leaders that he thinks are important for him at the state capitol. He's involved in individual legislators. He's involved in discussions with money people. He's involved at the state level, taking positions on issues. He's involved in and continues to be a dominant political figure in Louisiana. In fact, there's nobody can deny the backdrop of the Louisiana legislature isn't partly responsible by one person named John Kennedy. We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. It is pervasive in the state. It's his little cliche. It still dominates the Capitol, and it's the backdrop that John Bel ran into. John Kennedy's back there making sure that that cliche remains the dominant, I guess you'd say, background noise. And what I'm getting to is he's doing everything he has to do to be able to run. Will he run? Doesn't matter right now. He's in a position to, if he wants to run, he's done everything he needs to do to be able to say, I'm running. He doesn't have to start from scratch. If and when he decides he can raise the money, he can bring in national money. Everybody knows him. He's a popular United States Senator, especially with his base. And so point is, Kennedy, nobody can replace him as the front runner. But at the present time, he's in a position that if he wants to go, he's 1,000% ready. He doesn't have to do a lot of I got to do this to get ready. He's done it all and he continues to do it. So he's sitting there at the starting gate, and the question is, will he take the starter's gun and fire and say, I'm off? It's the only thing left for Kennedy. He's done everything he has to do to run. Now they're all waiting for the decision.
So as I understand, Ralph Abraham is jumping into the ring, Congressman Abraham?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Congressman in the 5th District. Well, he's not jumping in the ring because he's not in the ring. There's only one person.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Abraham hasn't said he's running. He said he's looking at it. He hadn't jumped into the ring.
Okay. I thought somebody told me that. Okay.
He wants to run. He's moving around the state. He's doing the right things. You can't criticize him, but there is something that matters. It is what is Kennedy do, because he can't push Kennedy out of the way. Nobody knows him outside of his district. He doesn't have the firepower. He can't raise the money that Kennedy has. And by the way, if Kennedy loses, he's still a United States Senator. So if you tell him no, good luck on that, because he still will be a U.S. Senator. And a congressman from the 5th District Monroe area isn't even in the same league politically and powerfully as John Kennedy. So he's out there on the skirts of this, or on the edges, but he's not in the ring because Kennedy dominates the ring and no one else can get in with him.
Sure. So am I correct in saying that in terms of the legislators, obviously we have a big election next year. I was kind of surprised that 3 years ago, that most of the legislators who thought that they were on the rack, they survived. And which gets to what you were saying earlier, and that is that people feel comfortable with their own legislators, and that's why they continue to vote for them. Okay, you must have dropped off again. Bear with me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you must have dropped off. Okay, let's.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me just change questions, and because we have about another minute or two left, and I'm going to read a question here from Craig Moran on Facebook. What do you think about Kennedy calling for the resignation of John Bel Edwards? I read that
something about a food program.
That he could not manage the state government.
Well, what I think about it is what I said. He's doing what he has to. He's putting himself in a position. He's attacking the governor any chance he has. He's involved at the grassroots level in Louisiana. He's involved in every aspect of politics in Louisiana, and he's preparing himself, putting himself in a position to run for governor. And part of that is to do everything he can to make his potential opponent as unpopular as he can make it.
Okay, so. But I mean, it also. I mean, if you think about it, recommending that a sitting governor resign is beyond bizarre, and so you have to wonder. I mean, I'm talking about whether the governor is Jindal, or Edwards, or Vitter, or Kennedy. I mean, saying, that a governor should resign is just bizarre.
Not for Kennedy.
I understand that. I understand.
Kennedy's he's a different animal. He didn't get along he wasn't exactly best buddies with Bobby Jindal.
Right.
There was no love lost. You can say what you want about he's a supporter of Trump, but he's certainly not part of the sheep. He doesn't follow around Trump on anything and everything. He disagreed with him on net neutrality. He takes different positions. You can talk to White House staffers. Kennedy is not one of the guys that they think is going to be with them on anything and everything. He's a Trump supporter, but he's independent. He's not going to vote or be with the president on anything and everything just because he's Trump. So Kennedy has reached a point in his political career where he feels comfortable. He's that he knows what he's doing. Whatever he plans to do, he's inching his way towards it. Will he eventually look at it and say, I really don't want this, I like what I'm doing, and go up to the last second as far as he's concerned and make a decision and run or not run. But he's earned the right because he's a United States senator and he's very powerful and he's very, very well known and he's popular. So it's just something that you're going to see a lot more of. You're going to see these guys attacking each other with much more vicious stuff than that, and it's coming. And it'll probably be more part of all next year. And you think this legislative year is a waste? Wait till next year.
Yeah,
I mean, that's inevitable.
Sure.
You know, so none of this stuff do. Like the public doesn't pay a lot of attention to that stuff. It doesn't. We may think it's not proper or proper, whatever else. We may cheer for Kennedy, or if we're supporters of Edmund, think it's crude and shouldn't be doing that, and you're not helping fix the situation, and you're part of the problem. But in their world, in what they're, it's just typical now, and it's political. But as far as the public caring about what they think about each other, they just again, there's no connect with the public on what these politicians how they talk to each other, and how it affects them. There again is the disconnect from state government and all of the doom and gloom stories, or now the trash talk.
So I'm looking at a comment here from Tim Allen Matthews. When you increase sales tax 1% and have a problem managing the money, then you should resign. Anyone in that position. Did Kennedy, by chance, did Kennedy call on Bobby Jindal to resign, who was running for president for 8 years? I'm just wondering.
No, I don't think he would. First of all, they were the same party.
Sure. I mean, look. In all fairness, you know, whether or not you believe that taxes should not be increased, etc., the legislature and the governor have been responding to what the legislature and the prior governor did, as well as the oil price dip. Am I correct?
Jindal had 7 years of no money.
I'm sorry?
And Jindal, as you remember, Mike Foster was, look, these guys are not popular compared to Mike Foster. Foster was in the high 70s. He had money. You cannot have a state with this kind of constitution or this type of government and expect to be popular when the whole basis of state government is you have to go to the governor, you have to kiss his ring. You're a DA, you're a city councilman. If you want a government street fixed, which is state road, if you want funding for whatever, you have to go to Baton Rouge, and you can't even have a tax in East Baton Rouge Parish without the bond commission approving your ability. That doesn't happen in most states. So Bobby Jindal got what he deserved. This governor is getting what they deserve. The type of government we have puts you in a position, if you don't have a lot of money to give away states, you are going to have a miserable system in fight. If you have $700 million surplus, nobody cares, you can get along with everybody, go spend money across the state, and as Foster did and Edwin did his first 8 years. But since we are now running out of people to tax, and we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars coming in from unknown sources of like oil and gas or other unexpected sources, state government just doesn't work that well. And everybody calling for a constitutional convention to fix the spending, the revenue is correct. So John Bel Edwards is no different than Bobby Jindal. He's broke.
Yeah.
And when you're broke, you're not going to be that popular.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I remember Foster and the Tooth Fairy, issue, and it's amazing, what they found 400 million. Am I correct?
Well, Foster was trying to tax business in his first year after he was 2000. Foster, remember, they didn't even pass a budget. It was such a controversial session. He claimed in January he started talking about raising taxes because they had a $700 million deficit. And he spent 2 sessions trying to pass taxes on business. He came up with all kinds of different tax schemes, and finally the session ended with no budget even being passed on that. So when Foster didn't have money, he had a very contentious 2000. His popularity suffered. And what was sad about it was, towards the end of the year, later that year, Drennan announced that an $800 million surplus, so the $700 million deficit was wiped out. So we went through a year of contentious pitched battle fights with business versus Foster. And in lobby, it was war for 7 months.
Right.
And it was all for nothing. So without money, Mike Foster became just like Jindal.
Right.
And so if you want to fix something in Louisiana, people are really concerned, start taking a look at all the money we spend at the state level that should be left to the local. Rearrange our spending priorities. Then you can fund higher education. But Houston doesn't. Houston is self-contained. If you go into other states and you look at what they do versus what we do, the governor of Louisiana is anointed by the revenue we get. So everybody has to do what he wants, or you get cut off. When you don't have money, it's a very difficult fight. And whether it's Jindal or Edwards or any other, you're getting what you deserve because you need to fix the system.
Right. I agree. Money, the mother milk of politics, for sure. So listen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your being with us. Those people watching now, please go ahead and share or like. Try to get this out to as many people as possible. Those people who watch it later, please go ahead and share. You can comment under the video, and I'm going to go ahead and push a couple of buttons. Tomorrow we're going to have Rob Manis on Friday, and next week we have John Kay, and also on Tuesday we have a special guest, a former state rep, and we'll talk about that later. So I'm going to push some buttons right now, and Bernie, if you don't mind, just say on.